All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank those of you who called in to tonight's ASQ Inspection Division webinar. Today, I'm grateful to host Paul Critchley. Paul is the co-author of The Whole Professional. He's a consultant, a speaker, he's a podcast host. He's also the president of New England Lean Consulting. Paul has a background that spans multiple industries. He went to one of my alma maters at Clarkson University with a degree in mechanical engineering. He has a master's in management from Rensselaer Polytechnic and also a master's in organizational leadership from Quinnipiac University. Paul is involved with multiple professional organizations, including ASQ and some of the supply chain groups out there. With no further ado, I would like to introduce Paul Critchley. Paul?
All right, Chris, thank you. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. It's an honor to be here. I appreciate it very much. So we'll go. So as Chris mentioned, this is a little bit about me. I won't reiterate all of it. But yeah, I'm very honored to be here. Big supporter of ASQ as well as AME, APICS, right? Trying to do all the right things in industry. So again, this is a little bit about me. And fun fact, I don't know if you're a fan of the show, but I've actually appeared on Shark Tank before. So if we have time at the end, I'll tell you that story. So we're here to talk about, lean in the global sense. Really, it's about leadership, organizational development. So where I like to usually start is talking about work in and of itself. So Monday through Friday, we have 120 hours available, right? That's just math. There's nothing we can do about it. Now, assuming you get 8 hours of sleep per day, which I'll tell you most of us do not, but for the sake of ease of math, we'll say that we do. So now we have 80 hours available to us. So right away at best, we are split 50-50 between what we call work and life. So my first rhetorical question for you is, when was the last time you worked only 40 hours? I will say most people don't. Here in the United States, we average somewhere between 47 and 50 hours a week. It also doesn't include any time commuting, which here, again, in the United States is roughly about half an hour or so. So there's another hour that we lose. Or what I call planned time apart. Now, those could be kids' activities. My wife and I have 2 daughters that are 12 and 15. And between the 2 of them, they have 12 dance classes at a local studio. So in any given week, because of what I do for work, which is consultant, I was telling Chris before we hopped on, last year I logged almost 30,000 miles driving to and from clients. So depending on what's going on there, there would be nights that, my wife has to do pickup or I have to do drop off, and, one of us will feed one kid and the other one will feed the other one, so on and so forth, right? There's a lot of logistics here at home. Also, it doesn't include any other, anything else that we are doing. And then there's all the usual domestic stuff like grocery shopping and mowing the lawn and doing the laundry and cleaning the house, right? And all these other things. So my point is, we spend more waking hours with our coworkers than we do our families, Monday through Friday, which can be a little bit of a sobering fact for some people. So my question here is, why do we get up and do it every day? Why do we leave the people who presumably mean the most to us in this world and go to this place that we call work, right? And I've worked with lots of people that really didn't like going to work, yet they still get up and did it every day. So we have to hopefully be getting something out of it. And it can't just be money. It's got to be something else. I usually do this as a pop quiz, but I decided against it. So this is a pretty sobering statistic right here. 3.5 million Americans quit their job every single month. And I'll let that sink in for a second. Again, here in the United States, we have roughly 128 million full-time employees, like countrywide. That's COVID-19 notwithstanding. These statistics are all over the place. The thing we hear a lot about right now is unemployment, and that changes every week. So really, this is pre-COVID. But when you think about that, 3.5 million people quit their job every month. And I'm not talking about people who retire, people who get fired or laid off. This is flat out 2-week notice, I quit. I don't like it here anymore and I'm leaving. Now, according to this Gallup poll, and these are Gallup statistics previously as well. 66% of workers in the United States reported feeling either not engaged in or actively disengaged from their jobs. That's 2 out of every 3. That's a pretty big number. And what these mean is not engaged in is, hey, Paul, you know what? I show up at 7, I'm leaving at 3:30, and whatever you want me to do in between those 2 times is fine. Just let me know. And aside from that, I don't want to talk to you. Actively disengaged from is, I'm looking for a new job right now, and I can't get out of this place fast enough. So when you consider that 2/3 of employees are in either one of those 2 buckets, it's really, really hard to try to get them to be excited about making any changes for the better, because they're basically 1 or 1.5 feet out the door as it is. Similar statistic, 67% of employees say they're sometimes, very often, or always burned out at work, right? Now, those who very often or always experience burnout are 63% more likely to take a sick day, 23% more likely to visit the ER, which I thought was a lot. I mean, I wouldn't have guessed that it was that high. Or also, I should say, 2.6 times as likely to leave their employer. And I'll tell you, I've been one of those 63%. I've had jobs at large companies that I would wake up sometimes in the morning and think, you know what? I just don't have it in me today. I got nothing left to give. I got nothing in the tank. And I would call in and say, you know what, boss? I'm not feeling too good today. I'm not going to make it in. I just needed one of those mental health days. And that's going to happen, you know, anyways. But I've also had jobs where I would leave home and have a 20 or 30-minute commute into work, and I could probably, you know, I could close my eyes and know roughly about how close I was to work, judging by how I physically felt. You know, it would start off with a little bit of, you know, pain in my stomach, and then I kind of would spread to my chest, and I would just, you know, my chest would be all tight. So by the time I'm parking my car in the parking lot and walking into the building, I just physically don't feel good. And it was all because I knew walking in here, I'm not going to get to do what I'm best at today. I'm not going to bring my whole authentic self to work, and it's killing me, and I really don't like it. And I was one of those people. I'm mid-40s, and I think I've worked at 7 or 8 different places. I've had lots of jobs where I've only worked, you know, 1 to 3 years, and I had to get out of there. So I've been through this cycle before. So in summary, workers don't feel engaged. They aren't fulfilled by their work, and they aren't supported by their boss, so they quit. And as I showed you, right, 3.5 million times a month. So they quit in high numbers. So my question for you is, well, what happens when someone leaves? Well, the first thing is, well, everybody who's left now has to pick up the slack. And by the same token, hopefully that person's boss can go to human resources or their boss and get approval to get a replacement. And I'll tell you, one of the stories I tell is this happened to my wife. They have a small group of about 7 purchasing agents, and they had somebody quit. So her boss went to their boss and said, hey, this person quit, and I'd like to, you know, put a requisition in to replace them. And what do you think the first question was? Do we really need that person? Can we make do with 6? Well, I'll tell you, they tried. They tried to make it go. Of course, my wife's boss said, no, we need 7. As it is, my people are overworked. And they said, well, tell you what, let's give it a quarter and see how it goes, because we have these, you know, fancy metrics on the wall, and let's see how those pan out. Well, 1 quarter goes by, and the metrics don't really change. They're still doing just fine. So my wife's boss goes to her boss and says, you know, I'd still like to replace this person. And the boss says, well, you know, these metrics still look fine. I guess I don't see why you really need anybody else. And that's where the light bulb kind of went off. My wife's boss says, you know, my people are taking work home every single night. They're working on the weekends, and we've been asking an awful lot of them for the last 3 months. And if we keep this up, we're going to lose more people. So we absolutely have to, hire somebody else. And thankfully they did. So they put the requisition out, found somebody, got him in there. But that brings apart the second part of the problem. So assuming you get approval to go get a new person, now you have to place the ad, you have to vet people, phone interview, in-person interview, background check, drug screen, et cetera, et cetera. And let's say you get through that whole process, which, by the way, takes anywhere, roughly about 30 to 36 days, and anywhere from 20 to 35% of the previous person's salary. So let's say you make $100,000 a year. It's going to cost the company somewhere between $20,000 and $35,000 just to find your replacement. That's not including that person's new salary. So it's in very real terms, it's a big cost for companies. And so when we talk waste, a lot in lean, whether it's, you teach 7 or 8, this is one of the biggest ones. And quite frankly, I don't think we spend enough time talking about it. With a few minor tweaks, and this is some of what I'll be showing you tonight, a few minor tweaks, we can avoid a lot of this stuff just by including people, helping them feel encouraged, engaged, like they matter. So I like to start, mention this as well. Mission, vision, and values, 3 very important things to any business. Now, I'll say it's not a mission statement, which I tend to be very bland and vanilla and not mean a heck of a lot. This is an example, I feel, of one of those. And this is for a very large company based here in the United States. We strive to offer our customers the lowest possible prices, best available selection, and the utmost convenience. All right, that's the mission statement of Amazon, which is something we all use, right? I mean, that's why they make billions and billions of dollars. But as an employee, not that I am and I never have been, but that doesn't exactly foster excitement to me. Another example, compare these 2 quotes. Excuse me. Why is it every time I ask for a pair of hands that come with a brain attached? And that was by my buddy Henry Ford. Henry Ford, or Ford, makes cars. And compare it to this one. Why not make the work easier and more interesting so that people don't have to sweat? TPS is a system that says there's no limit to people's creativity. People don't go to Toyota to work. They go there to think. And that was by Taiichi Ohno. So it was a little bit of a giveaway there because I say Toyota. But Ford and Toyota both make cars and trucks. So, but think about how different it is walking into either plant. So say I work there and I put in windshields. How I'm viewed, how my work is viewed by the company, by the management and the leadership teams, versus I'm a pair of hands or I go there to think, right? Even though my job, presumably between the 2, is the exact same thing. So ultimately, it comes down to respect for people, which is one of the pillars of lean. And really, it's about engagement and empowerment, and that's what people, I believe, are looking for. And our people are our greatest asset. As much as we do, value the products that we make and the strong process that we have, and hopefully, a lot of people on this call probably have a strong QMS, whether it's ISO 9001 or 1345 or AS 9100 or TS, I mean, you name it. It's the people that really enact these things and make these things work. And I love this quote by Steve Jobs. It doesn't make sense to hire smart people and then tell them what to do. We hire smart people so they can tell us what to do. And that's a big part of all of this, right? We have to be cognizant. We have to ask a lot of questions and then listen. I always say that the people who do the work know the best. I'm teaching a course at a local company on TPM, and I've probably said this 50 times because I have a lot of operators in this class. I say, you guys that run these pieces of equipment, you know if something smells funny, looks funny, sounds funny. I can walk by your machine and I'm not going to know the difference because I'm not there 8 to 9 hours every single day, 5 days a week. Also, in conjunction with that, we strive to have cross-trained and multi-skilled employees. So we have clients who don't do this, and we're working on it. But when one person in some cell or an office somewhere or is on vacation or they're not there, it comes to a screeching halt. That's not the best thing to do for a business. It's also about participatory and decision team making. So in other words, you have to ask questions and then you have to listen. It's not about, being the smartest person in the room and handing down edicts. Again, the people that operate equipment, that run processes and own them, they're going to know the best. Sometimes they need help by asking the right questions, but again, they do this every single day. They're going to know it better than anybody else. And we have to provide the resources so they can be successful, which again, means a lot of times giving them the time to stop, think, and again, ask those questions of, hey, what can I do? What can we do to this process to help make it better? And a lot of the stuff is pretty simple. I'll give you a few examples. Sometimes we do get resistance. And again, that's nothing new, whether you're doing lean, quality, right? Sometimes that root is fear. Certainly when I walk in or when any of our consultants walk in, we get a lot of side eye, and a lot of people look at it as like, who the heck is this guy? Or who are these people? We don't walk in and think and start handing down, advice to say, well, here are all the things that you do wrong, right? Obviously you don't do that, but it can be very scary because a lot of people, even in 2020, they're not exactly sure what lean is, what it does, what it means, but they've maybe seen or heard it, and it gets twisted sometimes to do more with less, and that quickly develops into do more work with less people. And then people really start to get scared. If they think they're going to lose their job, that's a surefire way to short-circuit any kind of engagement. And the first question that people will ask in their own mind is, how is this going to affect me? Here comes Paul and his crew, and they're going to take our cell and go from 10 people to 6. What are those other 4 people going to do? And is that person going to be me because I'm the low person on the totem pole and I can't afford to lose my job? We just had a baby. It very quickly can spiral, right? So we have to be cognizant of that. Sometimes it's fear that it's a loss of control. Sometimes people have the tribal knowledge and they don't like to give it up. So that can be an issue too. And ultimately it activates the amygdala, and this is the part of your brain that's kind of that little walnut-sized thing down in the middle. It's the fight, flight, or freeze response. It's impossible to engage while that occurs. So we'll be talking sometimes to folks, and I've gotten to the point where I can almost tell if they're thinking of all the things that I just kind of rattled off. It's because I can see it in their eyes. So that's a clue for me to maybe hit pause and say, listen, let's be clear. I'm not here to try to take your job away. And that's what I mean when I say address through proactive communication and setting up clear goals from the beginning. It's vitally important that people know there's a light at the end of the tunnel and it's not a train, right? We have to be very clear, and you're going to have to say it multiple times because it's not always going to sink in, especially if the amygdala is lit up. Because again, people they're not listening. They can't physically hear you because they are off thinking about something else. Sometimes the root of resistance is pride. These are people that need their worth verified. And I alluded to this a little bit in the last one, but these are the definite keepers of the tribal knowledge. These are the people that, when I start talking about standard work and work instructions and writing things down like in a process or a procedure or a form, they get really nervous because they think, well, if I write all this stuff down and then it's, in this file somewhere or on the computer, my worth goes away. And I've always been the go-to person. Like every company I've ever worked for, and most of our clients have, those few people, handful of people that they are just the ones that when nothing else seems to go right, you call these people and they can make the problems go away. How you address it with this, how you address change with these folks is early engagement. You have to involve them in the process. When I talk about the people know best, these are some of those people. Oftentimes these are people that have, air quotes, come up through the ranks. So they've been there. They have the trust and respect of the people in their, on their shop floor or in their office. So it's really important to engage them early in the process because it makes it less scary for them. And it helps them understand that, no, we're not just going to take everything out of your head, put it on a piece of paper so we can get rid of you. We need your help because we recognize that we can't get, I hear your name. I had a person that reported to me. Her name was Paula. I must have heard her name paged. If it was once a day, it was easily 20 times a day. It was Paula to this line, Paula to that line, Paula to this office. She was literally running around all day long just putting out fires. Now that to her was all she'd ever known, so that's what she assumed to be her job. So when we started doing a lot of lean, initiatives, she did get a little, what's the word I'm looking for? She got a little nervous, but I had to pull her aside, and again, same thing. I said, no, this is absolutely 100% not going to happen, but, I need you on more important things, and you can't get any of this other stuff done if you're getting paged 20 times a day. The third one is sometimes it's a person who has what I call a victim mentality, and these are folks that will shed responsibility, blame others for their problems. They like to point out issues, but they never offer any kind of suggestion or solution. These ones are tough. Now, one note on this one, I'm not necessarily talking about people who don't buy in right away. Some of the biggest wins I've ever had with lean or any kind of change initiative have been from the people who were very skeptical up front, but then once we proved to them the value, they were probably the biggest proponents of it. So I'm not talking about those folks. I'm really talking about the people who are, for lack of a better term, the cancer in the organization. Now, as I'm talking, I'm going to assume that you're probably thinking of people that you've either worked with now or have worked with that were these people. These ones are tough. And like I said, sometimes it's hard to understand where exactly they're coming from. This one takes a lot of time, too, because you're really going to give people an opportunity to kind of get used to the words that you're saying, the direction that you're heading. So you'll notice the list on how you address this one, excuse me, is very lengthy. And it's a lot of the same as the first two, right? So it's early engagement, involvement, asking questions, setting up clear goals. Those are ways to figure out where these people are coming from, because this can be veiled as many, many other things. Once you get to that point, you finally figure out, you can address through either a PIP, which is what an acronym I use for Performance Improvement Plan, which are those times when you bring somebody in and say, listen, I'm not getting from you what I need, what the company needs. I need you to focus on these things, right? It's very formal, definitely have to have human resources involved. I've had people that I've put on PIPs before. Sometimes they turn it around. It's kind of like a wake-up call. Sometimes I've done that and it hasn't worked out, and that's when I say, well, I'm sorry, but you have to go. It's just, it's nothing personal. It's not that I hate you or you're a bad person. This just isn't working. It's just not a good fit. We're heading in a different direction than we once were, and, if you're not willing to come along, there's not much I can do. These are also folks that will often take other people down sort of with them. So if they're walking around the shop or the office and they're bad-mouthing, you or management in general, it can be an issue, especially if they have some people who look at them and, with some amount of respect and trust, because they think, geez, if Paul's saying this, then maybe it's got something there. You can't afford to do that because it can go south real quick. When it comes to problem solving, this is sometimes what our typical approach is. We'll have an issue, and I'll make one up. Let's say on-time delivery is not where we want it to be. And I've seen leaders, and thankfully I will admit I have not been one of these folks, but I've seen leaders go out to a shipping department and gather up everybody that works there and say, all right, listen, you guys, our on-time delivery is 80%. We need it at 100. Like, I've been very clear about this, and I've given you guys plenty of opportunities to figure this out, and you have yet to be able to do it. So here's the desired outcome. I want it at 100%, and here are your options. You can either figure out how to do it, or I'll get somebody who can. So you guys decide. What do you want to do? That's not the appropriate time to ask. That's not a choice, right? That's an ultimatum. It's do what I'm asking with a process you have no control over and give me what I want, right? And I say this too, each of us thinks we know what this should be, but we have a view that's based on incomplete data. Now, I know I said that I made that part up. The percentages are made up, but that actually did happen at a place. And I watched the leader do that, and obviously it went over like a lead balloon. And they didn't ask a lot of questions, and actually, in fact, they didn't ask any questions. They didn't seek first to understand, to borrow one of the 7 habits from Stephen Covey. What this leader would have realized had he asked that question is there was 0% chance you were ever going to get 100% on-time delivery, because one of the manufacturing cells that delivered parts to the shipping department didn't do that until about 15 minutes before the UPS, FedEx, freight trucks all showed up. And there just physically wasn't enough time to get all that stuff done. And I'll tell you what we ended up doing, sans leader, was we went to the assembly department and said, hey, instead of you guys delivering everything you've made all day down to the shipping department, how about you meter it out during the day? That way, by the end, you only have a few things to get done. And happy ending, we eventually got to where we needed to. But again, it had nothing to do with that leader. So here's what I like to say. It's a very similar process, but you got to ask that question up front first. Go out to the shipping department and say, all right, guys, listen, I know you know our on-time delivery is not where it needs to be. What's going on? How come? Talk to me. Help me understand. And it would have been a 2-minute conversation, because they would have said, well, boss, I'm glad you asked, because this assembly department, right, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That brings us to the shared outcome. So the shared outcome is the guys in the shipping department don't get yelled at. They meet the metric that they were given, i.e. 100% on-time delivery, which, oh, by the way, is what the leader wanted, the plant manager wanted. And it had nothing to do with the people in the shipping department not working hard enough and not wanting to do a good job. They physically couldn't. That's when you explore what your options are. You say, oh, wow, I didn't realize that, so let's get the folks from the assembly department down here and figure out what we can do. And then you come up with different choices, right? That's workable for everybody. And again, the end result is the shared outcome that everybody gets what they want. So there's 7 steps to overcoming resistance, and there's probably a lot more, but these are kind of, 30,000 foot view kind of buckets. So the first one is establishing a compelling case for change. One of those things is the market that you're in. So you look at this graph that I have in the upper right-hand corner. Those are digital cameras, and you could probably, and I haven't pulled this, and I should go look, but consider, I used to have a film camera. I'm that old, right? I don't even know if you can buy a film camera anymore, because digital cameras completely obliterated that industry. Well, as you can see from the red line here, smartphones pretty much killed the digital camera as well. Unless you're, you're a hobbyist or a professional photographer. We're all walking around with a device in our pocket that has a camera that's just fine, right? And the quote I'm alluding to here with a faster horse, my buddy Henry Ford, somebody had asked him a long time ago to say, hey, he didn't invent the automobile, but he certainly did a lot to popularize it. And they said, well, did you know you wanted to get into this business because you talked to your customers and that's what they said they wanted? And he kind of says, no. He goes, if I had asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. So in other words, I think what he was saying was sometimes we get tunnel vision. We know what we want, but a lot of times we just say we want it better, faster, cheaper. We don't necessarily know that, hey, we're trying to solve a transportation problem from how to get from A to B. We're looking at the mechanism at that time, which was a horse, and saying, well, just make a bigger, better, faster horse, and then it's worth more money, and we'll just do that. You also have to do an honest SWOT analysis, and this is one of those tools. It's not a lean tool, but it's kind of stood the test of time. And you really have to take a look at yourself and be honest. What do we do well, but what do we not do so well? What are our competitors doing, and how can we get better at those things? And yet, again, creating the compelling case for change in which employees can invest. And I underline invest, and I don't call it buy-in. Buy-in is I'm selling, and I've convinced you that this is a great idea. Investment is I've asked you to help me design what that solution looks like. Also, it's not fake. I'm biased, but I don't like the term a sense of urgency. I hear it thrown around a lot, and when it gets thrown around, usually it translates to, right, well, we want to do this with a sense of urgency, which is just, code for saying, just do it now. I just want it done right now, right? As a society, we've almost gotten conditioned for immediate gratification, and that's how it translates in business. Well, it's a sense of urgency. That doesn't mean everything is urgent. Just like having a sense of humor doesn't mean everything is funny, right? There are things that are urgent, and then there are things that just plain aren't urgent, and they can wait. I talked a little bit about this, but I'll draw your attention to the upper right-hand graph. Remember I told you 3.5 million Americans quit their job every month. That's the light blue or the lighter blue bars here. And as you can see from 2015 on through 2019, they were gradually increasing. The gray bars are layoffs and releases, and then the dark blue is like other, so that's like retirements and that kind of stuff. And as you can see, dark blue and gray over the years pretty well level. Quits really had increased. And this goes to show you that people are getting fed up, and back to the whole 2 out of 3 people are disengaged from their jobs. And part of it is psychology too. We can't convince somebody to do what we want. All right, we can if you subscribe to command and control, and that's going to work right up until the time it doesn't work anymore. When that person walks into your office and says, "I'm not doing this, I quit." Everyone's favorite radio station is WeFM. What's in it for me? And it doesn't necessarily have to be money. I'll tell you, a lot of times, if you look at the polls of exit interviews, people don't leave generally for money. That's usually number 3 on the list. The first couple is all the stuff that we've been chatting about here briefly the last half an hour or so. And it's about, I didn't feel like my boss cared about me. I didn't feel like the work I was doing mattered to anybody. I wasn't getting anything out of it. It's that kind of stuff. That's what's in it for me. It's the intrinsic value. I love this quote from Dr. Deming. A bad system will beat a good person every time. If we have a bad system and bad processes, if it's too prescriptive and doesn't allow for people to think and again, bring their most authentic self to work, it's going to beat them down. And eventually they're going to lose, they're going to make a couple of choices and none of them are good. Maybe they stay and they turn into the 7 to 3:30 people and I'll do what you want, but after that I'm out of here. Or they flat out quit. I like to say this too. It's not that people resist change, it's that they resist being changed. And it might be semantics for some, but I think it's important because, and again, I see this a lot on social media. Well, people resist change, people don't like change, and I don't think that that's true. I mean, change is all around us all the time, and we deal with it. I mean, COVID-19 was certainly nothing anybody asked for. I think we've adapted relatively well. I'm sure that, most people would agree that, hey, if we had a choice, we wouldn't want it around. And that's the being changed part of it. For a big part of this, we didn't have a choice. So we are working from home. There are businesses that have closed. There are jobs that have gone away. But we're, under the umbrella of organizational change. I think people are actually pretty okay with it. And sometimes you're even excited about it. But you just have to do it right. Next step, develop a vision. A vision is a picture of the future that includes solicited input from everyone of whom that future affects. And I pick on mission statements a little here as well. It's not a mission statement. When you read that mission statement from Amazon, I don't think that that really inspires anybody. Now compare that with, say, Tesla and Elon Musk right now, or to another extent, maybe Steve Jobs, right? These are people that created a vision within their companies that people are almost fanatical about. They get people excited. Like, I mean, think about how people would perform at work if you could paint that picture and get people that excited about what it is that you do. And you have to develop strategies that support that vision. I say cautiously use the voice of the customer, just like in my Henry Ford example. Customers are going to know what they know, but they don't know what they don't know. That's up to us to help show them, hey, maybe you don't need a horse. Maybe you actually need a Model T. It supports the big four, which I call the big four: safety, quality, cost, and on-time delivery. But ultimately, lean has to become part of your DNA. And when we do this right, again, respect for people is another pillar of this. When we do it right, it really gets exciting, because when people feel like they can go to work and really affect their own change and make their own lives easier, and everybody's going to be happy about it, you can really see, the excitement come through. So once we've developed a vision, we have to communicate that vision, and it's going to take more than once. And you can't just put it up, in the break room on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper and expect everybody to be excited about it. You have to continuously say it. You have to speak it. You have to be positive about it and excited about it. And modeling the behavior is important as well. It takes hands-on involvement, right? It can't just be, stage speeches and all-hands meetings and that kind of stuff. It's got to be in the weeds, walking around. Hey, how are you today? How are you doing? What's going on in your job? Are there things that you need that I can help with? There's a CEO of a company in Massachusetts. He calls it getting naked. And he says, I communicate this vision, but if this is going off the rails, I need somebody to tell me. So in other words, it's kind of like that old story, the emperor has no clothes. He's like, I need somebody to tell me that I'm naked. And I have to be able to accept that feedback, because none of us is as smart as all of us. So it can't just be me. It's up to me to, set a strategy and a direction, but I need the people under me. Again, I'll go back to the Steve Jobs quote. You hire smart people, listen to them. We also have to empower action. So our job as lean practitioners, managers, quality professionals, we have to get rid of these things. I always said, as an engineering manager, my job was to remove roadblocks so my manufacturing engineers could do their jobs. Now, you also have to understand who the dissenters are, and I've got my little normal distribution graph down here. Consistently educate and communicate those. Those are the victims kind of that I was talking about earlier. But again, some of these dissenters will be your biggest proponents, but you got to figure out on, kind of which side they're on. And I say, remove if necessary, which I know is kind of weird for a lean guy to say, but sometimes you just have to. Change things that undermine the vision. If it's a system, a process, or sometimes people, if they're not supporting what you're ultimately going to, change it. I can't tell you how many times I walk into a place, well, we're AS9100 certified and all of our processes are frozen and our quality management system says this. It's like, well, yeah, but as long as you conform to the standard, you can do pretty much anything you want. And there are lots of places that are AS9100 and they don't do it the way you guys do it. You also have to encourage risk-taking. And of course, it's variable, right? So hopefully, I don't want somebody to change a whole manufacturing process on a whim. But it's that mentality of, hey, let's just try something. And if it works, great. Let's keep doing it. If it doesn't work, well, we'll stop doing it. But then we're going to go try something else. The status quo needs to get challenged as much as we can. I like to generate short-term wins. So if you're early on in your journey, I like to pick 2 or 3 projects that have some pretty good low-hanging fruit, because that's a good way to build momentum. And then you want to really publicize those things. See, like, hey, we learned something, we tried something small, and I wouldn't overblow it. You don't want to make a ginormous deal, because people are going to know that, well, that was a pretty short putt. That was kind of easy. But you do want to make it a point to say, hey, we're just learning, so we took some baby steps, but we knocked those out of the park. So we've crawled, now we're going to try walking. And then you get a few of those under your belt, and it's like, all right, well, now let's try to jog, right? So on, so forth. And you'll see that people will start to get excited, and they're going to want to say, hey, I saw you did that over there. Can we try that over here too? And you want to visibly recognize and reward people. Great, some ideas, right? Team shirts. I used to work at a place that if we served on a Kaizen team, we would get a really nice golf shirt with the company logo on it. And then on the left sleeve, it would say, you know, such and such Kaizen team. The only people that got those were the people that were in those events. And it almost became like a badge of honor a little bit, because, and it got friendly, competitive. We could say, oh, well, we were on such and such Kaizen team and we saved, you know, a couple $100,000 for the company. How did you guys do, right? And it's that kind of stuff. But it also must involve leadership. You don't want to miss an opportunity when somebody does something right to congratulate them, so they know that you saw it and that you recognize it. From there, you have to leverage the momentum. So you take those short-term wins and you turn them into some longer-term ones, right? You keep it going. You got to come up with things to say, all right, guys, we've done, you know, this, that, and the other. What's next? Let's keep it going. If you sit back and you kind of enjoy it, you lose that momentum, and it becomes that much harder to start back up. I also like to say you got to emphasize quality over quantity. I have worked for places that said, you know, we're going to do 12 Kaizens a year. Just because we figure, well, if the more Kaizens you do, the better off we're going to be. We need to get better faster, so we'll just do more. Well, what ended up happening was we didn't do such a hot job planning those out, and you really didn't get much out of them. So actually, I dare say it was more of a waste than it was anything else. And I don't think we ever saved any money, but we probably cost extra money. You want to hire, promote, and develop people who can implement the change vision. And you want to be able to, you know, allow people to see that. You want to promote from within. So if people are supportive of this, that could be a path towards excellence. Invigorating the change process. And there's a choice sometimes to be made. Do you want to go narrow and deep or broad and shallow? So in other words, do you want to pick a cell or a department and, you know, really go after it and try to get everything you can out of it? Or do you want to do a little bit all over the place? Or do you want to do a mix? We try to do a mix if we can manage it. But a lot of times it comes down to people as well. You know, what do you have for bandwidth? What can we do? I also, again, the Pareto principle always seems to pop up wherever I look. But you want to employ the 80-20 rule. And again, to me, it doesn't make sense to have a whole Kaizen team to try to get blood from a stone. If we've Kaizened this department 5 times already and the one right next to it is ripe, let's spend some effort there and go after that. You have to ensure the changes are sustained. That's a big part of this. We do tend to do an event. We'll have a closeout meeting at, you know, late on a Friday morning or early afternoon. We have a celebratory lunch, and then, you know, the rest of Friday is kind of lost because everybody's pretty tired. The weekend comes around, and then we're back to work on Monday, and everybody goes back to their real jobs, and we don't get to sustain those things. Finally, you want to adopt a new culture. And again, that's where I say lean becomes part of DNA, which I know is a little cliche, but it has to be true. Lean can't be a project. It can't be a one and done type of thing. You want to make it a part of how you communicate, how you bring in new capital equipment, how you train new people and bring in new hires. And really, that's it spans all the functions. From obviously you got to start manufacturing, but it's in the front office as well. It's in accounts receivable and accounts payable and engineering and purchasing and human resources. You have to remain visible and supportive. There's going to be, people generally will be really excited about this at first, and the short-term wins are great, but then it starts to seem like it's starting to drag a little bit. That's the most crucial time when you have to be kind of a cheerleader to let people know, like, no, we're still going in the right direction. We're doing some great things. Let's keep going. You want to publish wins if you have a company newsletter, like I said, all hands meetings or daily huddles, any of this kind of stuff. You want to keep promoting this. This is a little bit of a sales job for sure, to help develop what I call constancy of purpose. Sustainment. Along the way, we have to keep an open mind. I like to say you maintain true to the tenets, but be flexible with the how. There's really no one right way to do this. I hate to say it, but every company is a little bit different. Every company or organization has their own culture, and what kind of appetite those cultures have for this kind of stuff is going to be different. You have to be able to cater to those things. You can't just apply what the textbook said and expect that it's going to work. And you got to make it fun. Again, this is all about allowing people to come in and enjoy what they do, bring their best selves to work. Like, I'm an engineer. That's how I'm wired. I have the most fun when I get to solve engineering problems, which thankfully I still get to do doing what I'm doing. But if people don't have a chance to do that, it just wears them down. So we got to get back to being able to make it fun so we can, get people excited about spending most of their time with us all week. And you have to be committed to the journey. I like to say you balance firm compliance with understanding. Again, you have to be challenging. You can't waffle. But at the same time, it's like, okay, I get it. Maybe we just can't swallow this right now. But it's not going to be next month. Let's talk a couple of days from now. Let's get through whatever it is. But it can't be someday, because someday never comes. Maintain a bias towards action. Again, I could chat, if we had more time, we could talk PDCA kind of stuff. But try it. Just Nike applies, right? Just do it. If it works, great, keep doing it. If it doesn't work, don't do it anymore. So some rebuttals, and I'll breeze down through these kind of quick, because I know we're running a little short on time. But I also know if you're watching or listening to this, you've heard all these before, right? Well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, we've always done it this way. Hey, we're making money, right? What is the issue? Why do we have to change? Well, I always say there's no magic, right? Things aren't going to improve themselves. We have to put some effort into it. You've always done it this way. Well, how come? Is it just because that's always the way you've done it? That's how you were trained? Or is this actually how we have to do it? I mean, more important things to do. Well, yeah, that's great. But again, think back to film cameras and digital cameras, right? Those people didn't have the lean foresight, and look where they are today. Sometimes people will doubt your sincerity. They'll say, all right, yeah, I was around for TQM and re-engineering, and this is just one more fad. This will go by the wayside too. I'll just wait it out. Or lean is about making cars. I still hear this one sometimes. Or I hear that, well, lean's all for high volume kind of stuff, and we're a job shop, and you can't do that here. We have a client that I heard that from, 9 months ago. And I go there now, and they're like, you know what? You were right. I said, well, there's a reason why we have this very successful business doing this, because I kind of thought it might be. Subtle rebuttals. Things like when you talk about these things and people say, well, I'll try to do that. Well, sometimes that can be code for, yeah, I'm not going to make the time to do this. Sometimes they say nothing. Sometimes silence can mean they're considering and they're trying to wrap their head around it. So just be cognizant of that. Making an alternative suggestion, right? Well, hey, instead of bringing the stuff down to shipping 3 times a day, can we just do it once? Or what if we just do it a little bit earlier? If they make alternative suggestions, sometimes you got to be on the lookout. Maybe they're trying to make it right for them, not the whole value stream. So in summary, people come to work why? Well, they want to feel productive, they want to make a difference, they want to learn, and they want to add value. And lean allows those things to happen, but we got to follow the process. So it's part tools, which is the continuous improvement part. That's Kaizen and value stream mapping and 5S, right? And then it's respect for people. And that's a lot of what we've talked about tonight. You really need both. You need both to be successful. And finally, don't lose faith. There's going to be times when you're going to walk back in your office or on your drive home, and you're just going to want to put your head on, on the steering wheel and think, what do I need to do to get these folks to understand where I'm coming from? Don't lose faith. Sometimes it just takes people some time to come to terms and to really understand. And like I said, sometimes those people are the least likely that you thought would ever support you. So that's what I have for you. I know I went kind of fast. There's a lot to unpack there. We do have some time, so I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. And this is just a quick slide. This is us. So we're all over social media, and we're pretty easy to find. I keep my eye on that kind of stuff too. So if you tweet at us or you connect with the company or me on LinkedIn, always happy to chat about this stuff. I live for this kind of stuff.
Thank you, Paul. That was an amazing presentation. We really appreciate it. In order to wrap things up, I'm going to go through a couple of different questions here. There's some comments from some of the folks in the audience tonight. So I'll give them a few moments to type in their questions if there's any other questions that are coming up. And I do want to say, Paul, I don't know if you want to keep that slide up there with your contact information.
Sure. Sorry.
Paul is very active on social media. Almost all my communication with him has been via LinkedIn. So you're very responsive. I just want to put that out there for anybody that may want to get in touch with you. I'm going to go through a couple comments I had in my notes through the presentation, and hopefully we can start some dialogue there, and that'll give some folks some time to put some questions in the chat box.
Okay.
Early on in the presentation, you mentioned you might have some folks that are against any type of lean implementation or any type of process changes. One thing I wanted to put out there is, you know, if anyone's ever heard the term, the hardest eggs sometimes have the softest insides. You know, sometimes the people that are most vocal against change can sometimes be your strongest advocates if you can win them over. And I just want to ask you, have you ever had any experiences like that you would care to share?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a shipping manager that I had at a medical device company I was plant manager for, who was one of those guys. And he was just like, you know, I would talk about this kind of stuff, and he would be the guy in the back of the room with his arms folded, and, you know, you could hear the eye roll. You know, it was like that bad. Or I get the, you know, that kind of stuff, or you know, and I'd been at this for a while at that point, so I'd be like, hey, Joe, what, you know, I noticed you were, you know, you kind of couch, you're like, hey, I noticed you weren't exactly, you know, and he's like, listen, and he was one of the guys, he's like, listen, I've been at this for a long, long time. I was around for TQM, and, you know, the guy that had your job 3 guys ago, you know, was all about that, and then he left, and it all went by the wayside. We went back to doing it the way we were, and, you know, he's like, this is just, you know, it just sounds like more of the same, man. He's like, it doesn't. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, flash forward, they had a problem with being able to get work out, and they were running oodles of overtime. Their people were getting really frustrated, you know, because they were trying to do all the right things, and they just couldn't do it because their process was awful. So I'm like, hey, you know, we could just do a Kaizen event, and we could, you know, kind of fix some of this stuff. And no kidding. So we did for like 3 days, and it was all shop floor stuff. This was not sitting in a conference room with a bunch of sticky notes and paper on the wall. This was out on the shop floor. I rolled my sleeves up. I'm like, all right, let's do this. You know, we, you know, talk about what do you guys need? What, you know, what frustrates you? And they start coming up with some great ideas. And I'm like, all right, well, let's change it right now. I go grab a hand truck, and I'm like, all right, let's move this. And they're just all looking at me like, really? I'm like, yeah, we're going to do this like right now. So 3 days and $800 later, we increased the output of that department by 50% and cut overtime to 0. So it was like, wow. And after that, he's like, he was right behind me. Anytime anybody else said, I'm not too sure about this, he's like, come here, let me show you this. And that is like, yeah, you know, it's like when you get those wins, it's like, all right, you know, I feel, yeah, this is what I'm talking about.
You know, it's funny how most people that work in a company don't realize they have the autonomy to solve their own problems.
Yeah, I think it's because you know, a lot of times we're conditioned not to. You know, we use words like, well, you can't do that. The QMS says, or ISO says, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, well, yeah, but we wrote the quality manual, so we can change it.
Excellent. I want to go through some of the questions that some folks have typed into the chat box. There's one question here about your Henry Ford slide you had. And I can't remember, it said, why is it every time I ask for a person, it comes with a brand? So the comment was he looking for a stupid person or an employee who just works and not thinks? Can you explain that quote? I know that's a famous Henry Ford quote, but can you go into detail a little bit about what that means?
Yep, absolutely.
In the context?
Sure, yep. So that comment was, why is it every time I hire a pair of hands it comes with a brain attached? And what that was, so you have to understand, as good as Henry Ford was with not producing waste, and I'll give you a quick example, and nobody can ultimately confirm this, but it's widely believed that he used the crates, the wooden crates that he would get engine blocks from, as the floorboards of a Model T, right? So, and he also used the slag from his heat treat furnaces as filler for concrete for his new buildings that he built. So this guy hated waste. But, so that's, from a lean perspective, that's great. But what he also really wanted people to do was, you know, obviously he popularized the assembly line. He didn't want people to think. He wanted to come in and he would say, you do this. You do nothing else but this one thing all day long. And I don't want to really hear about, you know, well, you have an idea to make it a little faster. No, I'm the boss. Like, this is what I said, and this is what I need out of you. So that's what he was talking about. It wasn't that he wanted stupid people, but he was very hierarchical. I've read a lot of books about him. He wasn't the nicest of guys. But he was very much like, you know, you're a worker, your job is to work. That's what you do. If I want changes to the process, I'll call an engineer down here. But other than that, you just do what I told you to do.
Excellent, thank you. Here's another great question. It says, what's your advice for resilient leadership?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well,
you know, because as a consultant, you're going into businesses and you're implementing changes, and a lot of times you're dealing with the face of adversity in a situation where, you know, you may not have people that want to buy into what you're trying to do. So I'm assuming that's what most folks are dealing with when they're trying to change processes and implement new techniques.
Yep. It's hard. I'll tell you. I mean, you know, it's such a consultant answer, but it depends. You have to, I guess the best advice I can give anybody is ask questions, right? A lot of times, I've been a manufacturing engineer most of my career, so I can talk lathes and mills and end mills and all that stuff, right? So I know what I'm talking about when it comes to that kind of stuff. But what I don't do, and what none of us at our firm does, is we don't walk in and start pointing and say, nah, this is wrong, you can't do this, you can't do that. Because don't forget, you know, we spend all this time at work. And in very real terms, processes, machines, equipment, these are people's babies. You know, some engineer designed a process. The guy that runs a mill, he's run that same mill for 20 some odd years. You know, I'm not going to walk in there and say, hey, my name is Paul, nice to meet you. You know, I noticed your bench is a mess. You really ought to clean that up. Like, I mean, not for nothing, that's a good way to get a wrench upside the head, you know. So you have to just ask those questions, and that's what we do. I'll say, like, that's what I do. So in that same scenario, I'll go up and say, hey, my name is Paul. I work at New England Lean Consulting, and you know, we were hired to kind of, you know, try to help make your life a little bit easier. And then they get, because that's not what they're expecting. So they kind of look at you funny and like, well, what exactly do you mean? Well, you know, we're just, you know, because if I say, well, you know, we're looking for ways to make you more efficient so the company can make more money, I'll have lost them. But if I say, well, what can I do to make your life easier? Right? Because the end result is, if his or her life gets easier, then management and the bosses get ultimately what they want. Because if I can make this person's setup go from an hour to 10 minutes, now we've just got 50 more minutes of production time, which means their efficiency is going to get better, their output will go up, right? And all the good things that management wants. But you got to start with the people part first. The more I've done this over the years, you really have to start with the culture first and the respect for people part. The tools is easy by comparison. I mean, you know, I can go talk 5S all day long, and people are like, all right, yeah, I get that. That makes perfect sense. But you got to start by asking those questions first and just really listen to folks. I think, you know, ultimately they just want to know that somebody cares. There's Gallup statistics that I didn't include in this. But only 40% of people reported feeling like anybody at work cared about them at all. And that's pretty bad. I mean, that's less than half. So if you just bump that up, I mean, you know, there's studies that show you know, everything goes in the right direction. Absenteeism goes down, productivity goes up. I mean, people, you know, again, we spend more waking hours at work than we do anywhere else. So we got to try to do the best we can to make it a happy place. Because, right, the happier people are, they're going to do better work.
That's great context, Paul, and that brings up another question or comment I want to make. You know, if you've ever heard happy employees are productive employees, that's a true paradigm in today's workplace. With that said, you know, you have a lot of experience doing this kind of thing. You know, what's the typical percentage when you go into a business or when you go onto a new job site and you start with the culture and you realize that maybe production is not optimized or the quality is not so great because they may have just one toxic employee or a toxic supervisor, that's kind of the root of the problem and it hasn't really been identified by the business yet?
I will say, thankfully, it doesn't happen a lot. More often than not, I will say that by and large, people are trying to do the right things. I find that more, you know, people's hearts are in the right places. So, you know, people want to do good for the company. They want to do good. They want their bosses to be proud of them, you know, that kind of stuff. It's just a matter of understanding and communicating the facts that, you know what, yes, this is our process, and yes, I want you to follow them. But I also want you to tell me when this process is stupid and we need to change it. That's the piece that I think, that's where we kind of fall down, because I don't think we ask those questions enough, and I don't think we ask them in the right way. A lot of times, especially if it's a new person, right, a new person will adapt to whatever culture previously exists. So whatever that culture looks like, you know, if you wash up 5 minutes early for lunch and leaving, even if that person has never done that before in their lives, they'll start to do that, right? Even if they have a problem with it, they'll still do it just to fit in. So, like I said, thankfully, now I have had, conversely, I'll say I have had folks that were that toxic person, and it took a while. And like I said, it took me a long time to figure out where exactly they were coming from. Are they, you know, Joe, the shipping supervisor that just needs some time to wrap his head around this thing? Or is this person like legit never gonna be on board and behind my back and other leaders' backs, they're just, you know, circumventing it and telling everybody, you know, how dumb we are and we don't know what we're doing and we're, you know, this, that, and the other thing. I had one person, an engineer, he convinced other people that me and the rest of the leadership team were gonna, you know, tank the entire company. And this was a two-shift manufacturing operation. We had like 150 people, and he had a good handful or two of people convinced that the end was near. And this was all like under the radar, and he was full, it was full of just misinformation, stuff that was flat out wrong. And finally, after a couple of years, I'm like, listen, you can't do, you know, you can't do that. And where do you even get this information? And it took a couple of years. But finally, I'm like, you know what, we're all done. You gotta go. So it's unfortunate, and I don't like it ever, because again, you know, we work that funds, you know, pays our mortgage and our kids' dance classes and food and all this stuff. So I don't take that lightly. But at the same time, it's like I can't have you, you know, tank, because, you know, if you keep this up, you know, the company probably won't tank, but you're certainly going to do a lot of damage to it, and that's not fair to everybody else.
Thank you for sharing that example. Yeah, I do have another question, but I want to thank everybody for calling in tonight, because it has been an hour. This presentation is being recorded. If anybody wants a copy of the PowerPoint slides, feel free to email Paul. He's always looking to make new friends and contacts out there in the business world. The presentation will be uploaded to the YouTube page. Usually we get it up there in about a month, so just be patient with me. By the time we get it downloaded and converted and back up to YouTube, and then we will attach a link to the slides underneath the YouTube link. The last question I have, I haven't seen anything else come in the chat window. You talked a lot about implementing new processes and doing some lean stuff. And the question I have is, when you go into a business, a lot of times you were talking about getting these small wins and then getting people on board and then moving into more significant changes. So how do you, when you plant that seed of sustainability, how do you get it to sprout and continue to grow? Because as a consultant, you're probably going into a lot of businesses and doing some lean training and doing some process improvements and some kaizans. How do you get that stuff to stick?
It's got to be, that's where I pull the leadership team together. And I say, listen, guys, I would love it if you keep paying us forever and we can help come in here and help facilitate. But, you know, we're not going to be able to be here 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year. It's you folks. You folks have to pick this up. That's really the key. And it's both sides of the coin. So they have to model all the stuff in the 7 steps. They have to model the behavior. You know, they have to be the cheerleaders of this stuff. They have to keep people engaged, and they have to be supportive, and they have to give the people the time and the resources to be able to do this stuff. So when somebody comes with an idea, you know, that's not to say that every idea is going to get implemented or implemented right away. But you have to have a process to be able to handle ideas that is better than a suggestion box that I put something in and it sits there for however long and I never hear anything about it. It's got to be I put an idea in, and in a day or two, somebody came back and said, hey, we got your idea, we're taking a look at it, and in a week or two, they come back and they say, yeah, we're looking at it, it's a capital investment, so we're taking a look at the budget, right? It's that constant communication. And I get it, because people get, you know, I say people get so busy doing their jobs that they don't do their jobs, but that's unacceptable. We got to, it's just like going to the gym or anything, right? It's something if you don't necessarily want to do it and it's hard because you're already busy, you got to make the time. You have to force yourself. It gets easier, you know. So back to the leadership team, I said, all right, guys, you know, this is going to be up to you. You're here every single day. You got to get out of your office, you know, off your desk, and go talk to these people, right? And just listen to them. If they know that you actually care about them as, you know, people and human beings, and you can't fake it, right? You can't be disingenuous because it's counterproductive. But that's the real key, and that's the respect for people part. If somebody has a relationship with you and is built on trust and respect, and you say, you know what, Paul comes and talks to me, and I know it's not as often as he'd want, but he at least comes by, and he asks me how my weekend was or whatever, what can he do? Like, I talked to him about my machine, and he made sure the maintenance guy came over right away and fixed that. So I know if I have an issue, I can go to him, and he'll help me. Those people will run through a brick wall for you. You just have to ask. But they won't do that for you if they never see you, and if the only feedback they get from you is negative when they screw up, right, and all that kind of stuff. That's the real key to the sustainment part.
Excellent. That's great dialogue, Paul. Once again, we really appreciate you calling in. We did run a couple minutes over. I did want to ask some of those pointed questions. We appreciate those of you that have stuck with us through the presentation. Paul, we had about 50 people in and out of the meetings tonight, so it was a pretty decent turnout. And once again, everything has been recorded, and we will get it online. Not sure if you have any closing comments before we shut down the webinar.
No, I'll just say I know we're running late, but I really, really appreciate the opportunity. I mean, I know, again, I went pretty fast, but I love this stuff. So if there's any questions that anybody that's still hanging out with us have, and I didn't get a chance to answer, email me. That goes right. I get it on my phone. It drives my wife crazy because I lay in bed late at night and I'm reading this stuff. But I love this stuff. It's important, right? It's when you break it down, it's all about, you know, sending people home at the end of the day feeling good about themselves. And after that happens, to me, there's nothing better. So I'll just leave it right there.
Thank you, Paul. I thank you personally. We will reach out to you afterwards to send you a small token of appreciation for doing the webinar, and the ASQ Inspection Division thanks you for your time tonight as well.
No problem. I appreciate the opportunity. Night, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, Paul, and if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me afterwards as well.
Sounds great. Thank you, Chris, very much. I appreciate it, sir.
Have a good evening.
All right. Thanks. Bye, everybody.